space to share my story. And I think, before I start again, extend my gratitude to CHOW for having this space for all of us to come and feel safe to share all of the struggles and the wins and the things that this industry doesn't normally talk about out in the open. And so I'm just really grateful for this space and for us to come together, and to have new people on this call is even more special for me because, yeah, it's just a really great introduction to CHOW. So thanks for showing up today. I was kind of preparing before this. I got sent a series of questions, and it can be a challenge sharing a story sometimes when it's a very long, winded road and full of flavors and colors and places and people and things and restaurants. And so, my story really starts in a small northern town in Ontario. I was born into a family of two parents who unfortunately were also alcoholics. And so my childhood is really where it all began. I had to grow up quite quickly. I had to learn how to take care of myself. And in that time, I needed to start to make some money. We didn't have a lot, and I gratefully found the restaurant industry. So my industry journey really begins around the age of 15. I worked at a local truck stop in my hometown. And I remember my first day that I served tables, I made $18 in tips. And I was like, I get to keep this. Like today, I get to leave with it. And anyways, and I'll never forget that moment. And so from then on forward, it was kind of off to the races. So, I spent from the ages of 15 to 38. I worked all over. I was able to travel most of Canada, working from southern Ontario all the way into the Rocky Mountains. I worked in Whistler. I worked in Vancouver. I took some time and I went over to Australia, where I lived on the beaches and worked there. And then New Zealand called to my heart, and I worked there for about 5 or 6 years. And so in the span of the 25 years before I really saw the darkness and the depths that was taking its toll on me throughout the industry, I didn't see it at the time. I had a wild, fun time. I thought, this is life. This is amazing, right? Everything from a server to a sommelier. I was a bartender. I was a barista. I was a manager. I was a maitre d'. And so I did all the corners of the front of house, and it was fun. It was like, it fed me everything that I didn't receive as a child. Because I grew up so quick, I didn't really have a childhood. I had to kind of teach myself everything. And in that process, I never got nurtured or loved or given the attention that a lot of us need in those really important stages of our life. And so what I found is the restaurant industry gave me all of that. It gave me a family. It gave me a home. It gave me connection. It gave me instant gratification, sometimes obviously not in the healthy ways, but at the time I didn't see that. I thought this is amazing, and I don't have to look at my stuff. It kept me in a trajectory where I didn't have to look at the abuse I had as a child, or the sister that beat me up, or the bullying that I had at school, or the fact my family had no money and my house was absolutely chaotic and my father was a raging, angry man. I didn't have to look at all that because I was so occupied in traveling and serving tables and being the life of the party. I really got to live that kind of rock star life, right? Seems really fun and glamorous, um, until it wasn't. And so that kind of pivotal time, I moved back to Canada from New Zealand, and this is where the drinking was starting to get the best of me, hiding bottles, lying to people, sneaking it around. And I was 38 years old, and I woke up and realized that the party was over, but I hadn't stopped, doing, and I'll just be totally transparent. I was very addicted to cocaine. I was drinking every day. I wasn't eating. There was a couple of times where I had called 911 on myself. I really hit the bottom. And then the golden thread, which at the time I didn't see, is that I started losing my jobs. So I couldn't keep my job anymore. This job that I was so good at and could work a room, no problem, suddenly started to crumble out from under my feet because I couldn't maintain it. I wasn't that person who could drink on shift out of a coffee cup. I was the person who was going to get intoxicated at work. And so this was really like the so-called rock bottom for me. It took a few years. In 5 years, I lost 4 jobs in a row for drinking on shift. And that was it. The last one was really, really my rock bottom. And not too long after, I also lost my father, who died at the age of 59 from alcohol. And that was my wake up call, to be honest. I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't end up like him, that I wasn't going to give up, and that there was more to life. I knew it deep down that there was this gifted woman inside that had a light to shine. But with all the masks I was wearing and all the substances and the pretending and the faking, it was just, it was too much for me to bear, and I completely crumbled. And so exactly what Julianne had said earlier, I recognized how incredibly gifted and talented and remarkable we all are to be able to work in this industry, and I knew I had to get off the floor. But I didn't know, I didn't want to leave the industry. What else was I going to do? I never did anything else for my entire working life. And God sent me a local fisherman. And this local fisherman was building a distribution company. And him and his business partner needed a delivery driver, and they needed someone to navigate and logistically run the company, but also build up the accounts. Well, I knew the chef's language. I knew how the industry worked, the inside out. And this job also got me up at 5 a.m. I had to drive every day, so it forced me to get off the sauce. It took me out. It took me out of that loop that I was in. And so now I didn't get sober right away. It took a couple of years for me to really level up. But I think the most important piece in that couple of years is that I started to take on practices to help facilitate the actual the shift, the leap to get sober. So over time, I started like doing yoga a little bit. I got myself an EFT tapping practitioner, kind of like a spiritual coach. I didn't want to take the path of AA. That didn't resonate with me. I believe we all have the right to choose the path that feels best to us. And I watched my father go through the program, and so it didn't give me good feelings to want to be a part of that. So I chose more of a holistic approach, and I started addressing the energetics of the body. And I was still drinking at the time, which is actually fascinating as this story unfolds. And I would check in and do yoga. I would start showing up and doing the EFT tapping. I would kind of like dip my toe into meditation or spend a little bit more time in nature. And what I found over the course of those 2 years, when I still continued to drink, I was elevating and the drinking was still down here. The lifestyle that I was trying so hard to hang on to was down here. And so it got harder and harder for me to even enjoy having a drink. I would slip into states of depression for days. So finally, on September 1st, so it was during COVID, it was September 2020, I made a deal with myself to go 4 months. I said, just finish the year without a drink. I had never gone more than 10 days. I just wanted to put a disclaimer there that 4 months was like wild to even think that that was actually possible. But I started the journey with a 30-day yoga challenge, and I said, instead of hitting the bottle shop or the liquor store after work, I'm going to hit that yoga mat. And I did it. And I did 30 days of yoga, and I didn't go to the bottle shop. And that is what really shifted for me, because I did the 30 days and I thought, far out. If I can do 30 days, I can do 45. I can do 60. So I just started making those changes, and still managing my job at the seafood distribution company, which again was fantastic because I got to go in and see the chefs. I still felt like I was part of that community that was part of my life. So got sober during COVID. Eek. Biggest challenge I think I had ever been given in my life was to maintain sobriety throughout COVID. And so about a year into sobriety, I recognized the city of Vancouver wasn't serving me anymore. I had a calling to do something else. I had no idea what that looked like. I just know I needed to go. And it was August 8th, 88 Lionsgate, and I do not make this up. I was in a meditation, and I came out, and I had really done a lot of reflecting. I wasn't happy with the job anymore, and people were hoarding toilet paper and mask wearing. It was all like really chaotic for my mental state to try and just stay grounded in what I was trying to accomplish, which was self-realization and really like deep healing. So I went on after I came out of meditation on August 8th. I found a trailer parked in the woods on a place called the Sunshine Coast. I had never been to it before. I had heard of it before, but I had never been, which is surprising because I traveled a lot. And it's a 1971 Airstream parked out in the woods. available for 6 months over winter. I live on the west coast of Canada, so it's not like Costa Rica, Chris. And I saw it and fell in love. I met the woman on the property, and I knew right away. I sold everything I owned if it didn't fit in the Mini Cooper. I didn't own a lot, but it's just really good for story, dramatization of the story. I sold everything I owned. And honestly, I literally packed up into my Mini Cooper and I quit my really good job and I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew I needed to hit the reset button. And I moved into a trailer in the woods and I lived there for 6 months. I didn't work. Um, I did a bit of landscaping. I shouldn't say I didn't work, but I was very particular about the work that I was doing, and I really wanted to take that time to disconnect. And I survived that. Over winter, I had frozen pipes, I had mice, I would wake up and see my breath. I did some really deep practices that just really, honestly, I purged. I knew I had to purge what was stuck in my body, which to me was trauma, and I had to figure out a way to get it out. And that was basically my like sanctuary. That was the place that I was able to do that. And then spring came around in April and the birds were chirping and the sun was coming out. And I thought, okay, I'm done with trailer life. Let's get out of here. And so off I went and I continued to stay on the Sunshine Coast where I moved into this beautiful custom log cabin tucked in the woods. It was a dream come true. And I found it to be very, as you know, you brought up nervous system earlier. It's exactly what my nervous system needs. I recognized that the only way I can maintain sobriety and maintain clarity to move forward with my life is if my environment reflects that. So I went above and beyond to make sure I was creating that lifestyle that suited that. And so here we are. I'm 5 years sober on the 1st of September. And in that time, thank you, it came to me that I'm on this planet to give back. I'm of service. I've been of service my whole life. I truly look at us in the industry as being servant leaders, as being there for other people, creating experiences for others. And so I just played around with a lot of ideas on how I wanted this pathway to go. Originally, I was going to go and teach people spiritual somatic practices like what I had learned. I didn't even recognize the hospitality was something I wanted to do yet. But then I looked at the market and realized how flooded it kind of was, and something didn't feel right about doing that because these practices were so sacred to me. And then again, meditation is a true gift for me. Coming out of meditation, I had insight around the industry and how powerful it would be to take everything I've learned, the story that I have created and the path I have walked and all the tools and the transferable skills and translate that into something that is for others. So others know that they're not alone and that they can feel supported. And that's where Last Call Coaching came into fruition. And so came up with Last Call, and in that process, gratefully was hired from an organization in Calgary called On a Dime Transformations. And this was really what set the stage for me to recognize my ability to support and help others. So we were able to create a program for people coming out of treatment. There's kind of a gap in the system of care, and they come out of treatment and they don't have a plan, they don't have a purpose, right? They if their survival needs are met, that's great, but what's happening is without that connection to purpose, a lot of times people go back to old ways. So we created a program for these individuals that I was able to coach and facilitate, where we walked them through a lot of self-discovery, creating visions for themselves and roadmaps, how to get there, how to identify barriers. And through that work with this organization, I was like, this is just natural to me. The feedback I was getting, the validation, the affirming from the people I was working with really kind of ignited that light inside of me even brighter, I think. And so stepping into Last Call now, going, what is this going to look like? Everybody's saying this is so needed and this is so needed. I started working one-on-one with people first, and that's amazing. But then when I really pulled back and looked at my own story and my own journey, I truly recognized the responsibility of the employers to have to create support systems of care in our industry and how incredibly important that is for our people to really go from survive to thrive, as CHOW says. So that's where I started kind of retweaking my business plan to start addressing employers. And so within that container is quite large. Really just recognizing, again, like right from the onboarding process, right into the organization of creating these programs where we have the normalization of conversation. Stigma was a huge part of my story. I never felt safe speaking up. I was bullied in some workplaces for going through the things I was doing. She can't keep her shit together. You know, those kind of comments that send someone deeper, deeper down, right? I can think of times when I got hired I've worked in about 24 different restaurants. So starting out, there's no one talking and onboarding about how to take care of our people. What if I have a crisis? Or where's the prevention before crisis? Right? So I realized that in all those onboarding, if anything, there was just a big giant staff party where everyone, you know, I've done store opens before, right? And trainings and things where it's all surrounded around that, and it's at whose expense is that happening? Um, and so, yeah, I get to last call coaching. Um, and so now working with operators who are willing and able to see that gap in the system of care has been so incredible. I had a call with a lady at the beginning of last week. I saw I saw the emotion in her. I saw the drive. There is nobody on this planet, I believe, that has not been impacted directly or indirectly by addiction and mental health struggles. It hits us all in some way. It's just our level of feeling comfortable. It was just my level of feeling comfortable about talking about it and saying that it's okay to put up our hands and that we need help. So I think the biggest thing with Last Call is really focusing that mission on creating the safe container to say it's okay that we're not okay. Right. And so implementing programs that allow us to do that, having the language and the trainings available, like what CHOW does, like what all the other organizations do. How do we, that's another thing I hear from a lot of operators. How do we even start the conversation around these issues without opening a can of worms that we can't handle? What's the liabilities in place with these things? And so this is where I am right now in the stage of my journey. I'm a sponge. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can from other people who have walked the path, but also I want to come through as a very industry focused and unique individual. I don't want to go clinical. I want it to be real. I believe that we're a very unique beast in terms of our industry in comparison to others, right? I think that we go back to the nervous system regulation and the emotional regulation. This stuff is not talked about in our industry about how to come off of a shift where you're buzzing, you're like flying high. We've all felt it, right? It's like an adrenaline rush. How do we safely come down from that without numbing ourselves to the extent where we're in that loop and that vicious cycle of guilt and shame that comes with all of that? So it's really about teaching, educating, and becoming aware of how we navigate these sensitive topics in our industry. And that's really what Last Call stands for. And I've also, linked arms with an initiative called Recovery Friendly Workplace, which I think has a huge place in our industry. How do we, right? So recovery friendly means that we're catering to people's needs who may be in recovery, maybe proactive hiring people in recovery, um, having back to work, return to work accommodations that suit the individual's needs, right? So these kind of things I'm beginning to address within these programs that I'm creating. And, you know, I'll tell you, the feedback I'm getting has just been incredible. It's what keeps me going. There's a huge need for this. Um, and so I'm just really grateful I get to share it. And I'm so grateful that I took the time to anchor in all those practices that I did to better understand my mental health by witnessing the thoughts that I was having. We can look at mental health, but what is mental health? And in my journey, it was about solitude, intentional solitude, not cutting myself off intentionally or hiding from anything, but isolating myself so I could be with myself, so I could learn the thoughts that I was thinking, so I could see which ones were serving me and which ones weren't. And within that space that I created, I was able to gain reflection and insights and creative juices to create Last Call coaching. If my cup was full of all of the other things still, I believe I never would have been able um, to live this journey that I'm on now and do it in such a way that just feels right. And it's not easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not lollipops, rainbows, and unicorns. You know, I was thinking about this morning, you know, like as people who are in the human services field, I'm the biggest critic on myself to have to continue to show up and show up. But then we forget to give ourselves a little bit of grace too, right? And so that's been a really big part of my journey. It's not about me being perfect. I still have vices. No, I don't drink alcohol and do cocaine for breakfast. I've made massive changes, but the small little changes now, it's just like, just the little things now that I've created that space, I can see that maybe not serving me anymore, little patterns and habits and behaviors, judgments I have upon myself, judgments I have upon others. So I believe this is for me the ongoing work of my evolution. And then within that comes last call coaching, because I can give back to the community. I can give back and stand on stage with a microphone, which I did for the first time 3 times in 1 month last month. And, it just becomes easier and easier. And I'm recognizing that. And, that imposter that lives within all of us is actually my superpower, along with gratitude. But it's also my superpower because it's showing me that there's something on the other side of that fear, that little one that doesn't feel like she belongs here or doesn't feel like she's enough to be able to talk about these subject matters, or to hold space for people who are struggling. That imposter actually teaches me that I am, and I am more than capable. And so again, that's been the biggest gift for me. And self-care. I can't speak. I'm a self-care specialist. If we don't do anything, if I don't do anything for myself throughout a day that connects me to my body, brings me back home, I'm out to lunch. I'm out in the stars. So just really grateful. Yeah, thanks for letting me share. I know we still have about 10 minutes left, and I love questions, and I love roundtables, and I love discussions as much as, I am a server and I can talk to people for hours and hours. I really just want to bring this back and hear from all of you if you have any questions about my story or about last call coaching, or if anything landed for you in terms of your own journey. Just please feel